colonial expansions of Minoan culture. This had a revolutionary effect. It simply turned black to white and white to black overnight.
Michael Ventris, a 30-year-old architect, had smashed Sir Arthur Evans's long-accepted belief that the Minoans were the dominant culture in the Aegean. It now looked as though they were in fact an outpost of colonial Greece. But somewhat disappointingly, the content of the tablets was nowhere near as revolutionary. The Linear B inscriptions record details of palace administration, lists of names and trades, and quantities of goods used by the palace.
There's an awful lot of information that can be read through them about cult activity, for example, about social structure, about economic activity, and so on. But they are economic documents. They've rather unkindly been described as laundry lists by some people. But they give a voice, if you like, to people who are actually participating at the time that was impossible before their discovery and their decipherment.
Michael Ventris' genius was in being able to take what to us are symbols that look like Christmas trees, like television aerials, like curious roadside objects that are completely incomprehensible, and to make them into a living, breathing language. That is the most extraordinary thing to do when nobody else in the world could do it.
Michael Ventris was a very unconventional mind. He was not a professional classicist, for a start. He never went to university. He was able to apply a whole range of unexpected ideas to Linear B, and I think one of the signs of genius is your ability to approach a problem from many different angles.
Ventris was clearly a great linguist, so he understood very deeply how languages work, and that gave him an understanding of what sorts of things to expect in any decipherment. But he also had this great visual acuity, no doubt developed as an architect, in being able to see patterns and so on visually in his own mind.
All along, he was brainstorming about solutions. But he could do this and not allow that to contaminate the almost mathematical precision with which he was doing word positional analysis, sign positional analysis, laying things out on the grid. The one did not contaminate the other. They lived in separate compartments in Michael's mind. And one definition of genius is to be able to hold simultaneously in one's mind two contradictory thoughts. And Michael certainly had that capacity.
I think he was a great man, but great people aren't necessarily easy to live with. I didn't find him easy to live with, and I don't think my mother found him easy to live with.
The decipherment of Linear B came at a price. Ventris's home life suffered.
I think his relationships with people were on his own terms, and if he wanted to be amusing and charming, he would be amusing and charming, and if he wanted to go away and work, then he would go away and work. And he didn't have much time for us kids, has to be said.
Ventris's attitude towards his children was borne out in the design of the family home he built in Hampstead, North London.
We're sitting in his house now, and it's a strange house because from the outside it looks like a rather ordinary suburban villa. Inside it's a modern movement house, but even then it's complex because it's the other way round from normal.
There's an article about Ventris's house in Country Life magazine, which is actually titled "Keeping the Children Under," ironically, but actually there was a kind of core of truth in it, because the children lived downstairs and the parents upstairs. And I think he wanted to keep his professional life and his work on Linear B and architecture separate from his children.
I didn't like living in North End. It was purely subjective. You never really felt that you owned it. You never felt that you belonged there. Even my bedroom, I never felt that belonged to me, because they used to rent it out to people when I was at boarding school, and I'd come back and everything would be sort of depersonalised because somebody else had been living there. I didn't like it.
He was a father who did not want to be domesticated. He did not want that side of life. He wanted his wife to handle the children.
He certainly wasn't a new man, that's for sure. I don't remember him spending much time with us on our own. He did write us these amazing illustrated letters. But I would probably rather have had my father than have him constantly away sending me letters.
His son, before he died young, did actually put on record that he and his father were rather remote. He did add that, you know, when my father took part in family life, he was glad to be there and he was fun to be with, but it was quite a rare occasion, and he wouldn't... Well, as somebody once said to me who knew him, you wouldn't find Michael Ventris kicking a football around with his son, you know, that kind of relationship.
I admired him, but I don't think I liked him. But that was probably just jealousy, because I felt that he got all the attention.
It wasn't only Ventris's relationship with his children that had become strained. He and Lois had also begun to drift apart.
I think that they were quite well matched to begin with, but he matured and she stayed where she was. And he had so many interests that she didn't share.
She didn't have the curiosity which she did. She was a passive person and he was an active person. And I think she found it hard sledding.
Michael and Lois would ring me up and say, come on holiday. We went to St Ives and we stayed in Ben Nicholson's field in a tent, which was extremely alarming for me because I hadn't actually had the excitement of sharing a tent with a married couple before, and I wasn't at all sure what I was in for, especially as I was put in the middle, having been rather firmly told with Michael that he would go in the middle. So there I was, and quite unable to sleep. And so I had to turn myself round and put my feet on the pillow and my head out the entrance. Went to sleep and woke up, very wet due to rain or dew, to find Barbara Hepworth hanging over me in a black lace mantilla, saying breakfast was ready. Lois did say to me at one point that they had nothing more to say to each other, that they had been married so long that they'd run out of conversation, and that was the reason why they liked having me along.
Ultimately, I think he was not that interested in human relationships. As with many, many very clever people, he was more interested in work and ideas.
One of the great tragedies of achieving success too young is that what do you do afterwards? How often does a genius have a great discovery? I mean, really, every genius in history probably had one great thing that they discovered or did or created, and Ventris achieved that far too young.
He was not obsessed with what Linear B would tell us about history. He was obsessed with cracking a problem.